Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about some of the artwork of the project, some of the decisions behind how we put the map together, and what I hope will come of it now that it's finally being completed and distributed after almost exactly a year of working on it. So the way the project originally started was it was Molly Ruskoff's idea, Molly's Books and Records, to put a map together like this. She had known me from, we were just friends, and she had seen some of the paintings and comics I'd done over the years, and asked if I felt capable of doing something like this, which from doing, especially the portrait books, it felt like something that was familiar to me. So afterwards, we got in contact with Gina from Partners and Sons, and Curtis from Neighborhood Books, and Larry Robbins from Robbins Books, which is closed, but he's very still involved in the activism community. So these were the original paintings I made for the project. They're a lot smaller than the originals ended up being, and less detailed, I would say. They were rough, but I still wanted to put enough work into them that I could get an idea of how long the whole project would take. Some of the other changes too is that I tried to make them have less artistic, creative decisions in them and make them more literal. This seemed like a good choice because I don't know all of the people whose stories I'm painting, and didn't want them to feel as though I wrongfully represented their store. I even at the beginning of the project, when you see the upper left, that's Joseph Fox's bookstore, had thought about doing them all in a perfect grid square, which would have looked interesting, but I think it was a lot more practical to just paint like a literal store. So afterwards, the group and I started working on the cover. We wanted to do something that showed the icons of the city, but that wasn't as predictable maybe as Rocky holding up books or something like that. So we settled on Rittenhouse Square, which I think was a good choice because it's a very communal part of the city. Lots of people will read there, talk to each other, and there's lots of art fairs there as well, so it felt appropriate. And the goat ended up being a very convenient mascot, as I'll show you in the next image. On the right, that's the original drawing that I scanned of this before I started painting it. I just included that to show how much work I'll usually put into the drawing side of the painting before I started. So I think it's pretty clear that this is definitely supposed to be a positive project, and I wanted to further convey that by adding an illustration like the goat you'll see down there. And also, I just wanted some other artwork that we could use for the project, so that was the inspiration. I also thought it'd be funny to have the goat, after she works as a statue all day, going back and reading the Bookstore Map. So that's where that idea came from. Now I'm going to talk about some of the actual paintings of the bookstores. This is Ontario Street in Kensington. This store and all of the ones I've painted, I try to keep as literal as possible because, as I said, I do them as advertisements that I'm doing for everyone. And I wanted to stay true to how each of you, the bookstore owners, has put them together. I think in a place like this that has people that have never seen it before, like any of these stores on the map, they'll want to know exactly what they're looking for. And for the fans that really love these stories, a lot of those individual niche things about it, especially a comic book store, is going to be familiar to them. This is the actual reference photo I used for the inside for everything you can see on the outside of the painting. And then this is a photo I used as reference. This is the owner of Ontario Street holding up a picture of Samuel L. Jackson from M. Night Shyamalan's movie Unbreakable. This is an actual reference photo that's very useful, and I think will be fun for people who are familiar with those scenes to be able to see the outside shop of the comic book shop that was in the movie. This is Hakeem's. I believe this is the oldest African American bookstore in the city. They opened in the 1950s. This store is a really good example of all the photos that we'd have to compile just to paint one of these stores. Either I or Gina, Chris, Molly would take the photos and then send them to me as reference. And it would take a lot more than I originally assumed at the start of this project just to make one of these paintings. Like, we'd have to get an exterior shot just to get like the proper outside look, and then all of the interior ones, because as you can see, even like a really good exterior shot can have so much like glare. So I would go on the bookstore's Instagram or their website or somewhere like that and find this shots like this from the inside to use as reference. And while this took a lot of work, I also think it ended up making the portraits a lot better. Like, I know when I paint a portrait of a person, I think it's important to capture their like complexion and facial features, but I also think that the clothes they wear and the background they're in, the jewelry they wear, like, says a lot more about the essence and inside of the person. So in painting these stores, I wanted to go for that same type of, capturing that same type of essence that they carry. So if you look at the back tapestries on the wall or the books on the shelves, those are all what you can see inside the store. I think it'll be really interesting too, looking back on this project, since it is like a timestamp of books in 2023, what was being read at the time and what's still relevant like years from now. Like for Hakim's, for example, you can see like the 1969 project there, which I'm sure will stay relevant in the future, but it's cool since it's such a recent book now. This is Iffy Books. They are located inside Vox Populi, which is an art space building, pretty kind of north of Chinatown. And they are up 2 flights of stairs and down a hallway. And I think this store is a good example of ones that I imagine get less traffic than maybe the ones in Center City that I hope the map will showcase more of. And also, they carry such a niche, interesting, specific thing. I'll read the blurb for them. It is number 18, Iffy Books, the solar punk info shop you've been looking for. Books, zines, and workshops on DIY technology and degrowth politics, as well as electronic components and kits. I know when I read that, I did not personally know what solar punk stuff was, but it was very cool to look into it and read more about it. And I know for people across the city who are looking for a place like this, or didn't know that there was a bookstore that also had technology and stuff and like classes on that they'll be able to find it. I know for myself personally too, I spent hours and hours painting in this library. And from doing that, I've met so many people here who have become friends, who have helped me a lot in my jobs, and have just made my life overall better. So I hope, and I think it's a really realistic wish for this project, that like stores like Iffy that exist, even if they carry something so unique, will get the people who should meet each other to meet each other. I now want to talk about the physical map. It starts with the cover, of course, and which flips open to information about the bookstore project, as well as about myself, and our contact info. Then it has all the blurbs, the bookstores, and the rest of the page. Each of them has been written by either the bookstore owner or at least approved by them. And then the South Street inset is all the stores from 8th to Front Street. It really just serves to showcase the ones that are too hard to see on like the literal map. But it's also kind of cool because it is like a bookstore neighborhood in the city. The bookstores are organized from most northern to most southern. So number 1 being straight from the heart at Calvary Chapel of Philadelphia, and the most southern being a novel like in Pasco. Putting the actual map together was a lot harder than I thought it would be. My original idea was to just have a map of like the county of the city, and then just show like all the neighborhoods in the city, and you could figure out like if you live in Germantown, that means you have Uncle Bobby's and you're this far from the other bookstores. It was very difficult to like find any neighborhood map that seemed to like agree on anything. And so I ended up coming to this library and talking to Megan from the map collection. And it was really interesting because I guess all of the neighborhoods are mostly exist from like fire insurance code maps, or like voting districts, or just like general word of mouth. So there's no like official like counter neighborhood map from the city. I still ended up using this one though because there were so many neighborhoods here, and I knew this map was based off existing roads, so at least you'd still be able to figure out like from these outlines how far you are from other locations. I also used My Maps, which is something Megan showed me as well, which you can very easily just type in the address of the place, and then I use that as reference for like labeling the map. I also use the major roadways and greenery and rivers, which I think all were useful in navigating where you were. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I wanted to say that it's interesting for me finishing this because like usually when I do a project, I think a lot about like how well did I express like my ideas and thoughts in it. But this has been like such a communal project that like it feels like a really successful group effort, just finishing it. I remember someone saying to me at the end of it in a positive way that like it's a miracle that this project is finished. I can't say that like I honestly agree. Like to me, I feel like this is something that so many people wanted to come into the world that it makes sense that it finally did. Like I think the fact that Molly, Gina, Curtis, and I were able to spend the time to do it together, that Helen Ubinas from the Philadelphia Inquirer wanted to write an article, which then got tons of people from their own volition to donate thousands of dollars for it, and this city wanting to provide a grant for the project, or all the people that showed interest in it. I would do my own art fairs for my own work, and people would have known about the project and like just been wanting to buy merch for something that didn't exist yet. I think it's rare that any project that's finished and that feels like it's something like people really wanted. And I think it feels like that. It feels like giving something to the world that people ask for, which is really rewarding. So that concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, you can ask me.